Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. This month, we are discussing Saturday Night, which came out earlier this year, and Network, which came out 40-odd years ago? So, was that right? My maths right?
Almost 50.
1976. The connection being they are both films about television in the mid-1970s. In fact, specifically, I think it is 1975. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Please be aware that we will be spoilering both films. Oh, it's fair to say Network has some really great moments that you would want to watch for the first time.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live is sort of based in fact, and it's the
Yes.
fun of watching the story. Maybe not huge spoilers, but anyways, you've been warned. All right. William, give us a bit of an overview of 1976's Network.
Of course, Jeremy. So, Network is directed by the great Sidney Lumet. It is a very, very dark, very, very black comedy, a satire on television, on capitalism, and on a whole bunch of things that tie into the American persona in the 1970s, starring a whole bunch of very, very famous people doing their best. Oh my gosh, this is an actor's movie. And coming away with a whole bunch of Academy Awards for their troubles. So I guess the long and short of it is that Howard Beale, a newscaster, is told that he's fired. And he goes on a rant on live television, which kind of goes viral in that 1970s kind of way. And boosts him to superstardom, while all around the people, the producers, the people running the show are trying to construct something that will make them a whole lot of money in his wake. Chaos ensues, and again, it becomes much more than the initial sum of its parts.
Nice. I think it's also worth saying as well that the central kind of turning point of that film is that he threatens to kill himself live on air. So I guess a trigger warning for people listening, right? We'll be talking around the topic of suicide.
For sure.
I wouldn't say it's a huge part of the film, but his mental health definitely is.
Yeah.
Him being on the verge of doing harm to himself, potentially others, is definitely part of the story as well. So yeah, just be warned, listeners, that is a part of our conversation today. All right, Sarah, Saturday Night. Give us a bit of an overview of this latest film.
So Saturday Night is supposedly a dramatization, not a documentary, of the real-life evening back in October of 1975 when NBC Studios in New York was just about to put out its first episode ever of the Saturday Night Live sketch show, which was not yet quite called Saturday Night Live, but everything about it is exactly as we know to be true from watching YouTube and being able to go back and watch that seminal episode. You've got your Dan Aykroyd, you've got your Chevy Chase, and of course you've got your John Belushi. And so Saturday Night, the movie, which is directed by Jason Reitman, son of Ivan Ghostbusters Reitman, Jason Reitman has pulled together this wonderful cast of young people who look and sound and impersonate the actors who, of course, have made their names over the last 40, 50 years, as impersonators of political, Saturday Night Live is still going to this day. So it's so incredible to go back and watch the very first episode of a sketch show that looks as though it was designed out of utter chaos. And that's what's so fun about it.
Nice. I love Saturday Night Live. I think it's worth saying out the gate. And I have regularly watched entire seasons. I sort of dip in and out because, Saturday Night Live, like any live sketch shows that get created regularly, it's hit or miss.
Yeah.
And so you usually get one or two good sketches per episode. And you have to kind of sit through a lot of misses. And that's part of the I guess what you sign up for when you watch that show.
Had you ever watched the very first episode?
No, and I was going to do it. I said to William, because William and I went and saw Saturday Night Live together. Saturday Night together.
Yeah.
And I said, I wish I'd watched the first episode in preparation.
I did watch it in preparation because I didn't grow up with it. Because, of course, we didn't grow up in America. People who grew up in America, they were watching it every week. And for us, I suppose it's either been something that we managed to get syndicated, I guess, or nowadays we would watch on YouTube, wouldn't we? So luckily, I mean, and I say luckily for me, because I am not steeped in, I grew up with Chevy Chase movies, and I grew up with Dan Aykroyd in various parts, but I did not grow up with Saturday Night Live. So I'm really glad I did go back. We did watch the first episode. And so, of course, when you're watching the film Saturday night, it's actually really rewarding to be able to see how well, incredibly well, and and so immaculately they recreate the shots, the scenes, that incredible. We're cutting straight into it now. That incredible scene with Nicholas Braun playing Andy Kaufman. And when Andy Kaufman is doing that sketch where he is miming along to opera. Oh my goodness. When you watch the original of that, it is absolutely extraordinary. So I thought, oh my gosh, how are they going to do the movie? Are they going to sit us through the entire episode? And they don't. They handle it very cleverly in the film because they will show us a little bit of rehearsal and then that's all we're going to get of that. And then there'll be a clip or, not a clip, sorry, part of the actual once it's going out live. Hey. So I think they handled that nicely. But yeah, it does pay to go back and have a look just to see how good the impersonations of the impersonators are, if you get what I mean.
Well, I think on this whole SNL spectrum, I would be on the other end compared to you, Jeremy. I have, as I said when we were watching this, I have very, very little connection to SNL. I won't say that I've hated everything I've seen, but it just does not connect for me. Anything.
Yeah, not when Ryan Gosling is a special.
No.
See, I think Ryan Gosling on there is amazing.
Something about SNL.
Right.
And again, I've not seen a lot of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
But what I've seen of clips from both the classic era and the modern day era across, it's 50 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy. What an institution. Just something about it. There's people I like in it.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed them in many, many other works. And yet, when it's in this live format, maybe it's the writing, maybe it's the timing, it's, for me, extremely unfunny.
Yeah,
and
right.
I've never found it funny. Just something about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I went into it with very little knowledge of who these people were, apart from, I guess, Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd. And I knew, what Jason Reitman was capable of. I knew that this was like a big fanboy project of his that he's been developing for years and years. And so, heading in without any expectations, I think it was a relatively good time. I think the movie does draw a lot of its strengths from the I recognize that.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Jim
Easter
Henson,
eggs.
we all know what Jim Henson is like, for example, right? And of course he's a guest star on it. He's not core cast. So those are quite satisfying moments, aren't they? If the performance is done well. Yeah.
And I think overall the performances are really quite good. Again, I guess out of the entire cast, I probably know Chevy Chase the most. I've seen most of his stuff.
Yeah.
And that
young
is
lad,
a performance that nails
that
Chevy
young
Chase.
lad, right, is amazing as Chevy Chase.
I would say he's probably funnier than real life Chevy Chase.
Yeah, right.
Like he has a better sense of timing. It's like, gosh, this is the energy that you feel. And really, I think across the cast, what's his face from Succession?
Yes, Nicholas Braun.
Yes. Playing the dual roles as Kaufman and Jim Henson, like heaps of fun.
Yeah.
So again, when we were watching it, Jeremy, I think it was a good time. I just not being a fan of the show, I think
totally.
really takes a lot out of it for me.
I think that's fair because I have always loved watching it as an audience member. I've always loved fantasizing about what it would be to
be on it,
be a cast member or a guest, or just be somewhere and go.
Yeah, I'm like you. I think
be
that
an audience.
too.
Like I wanted to be in the audience when I was in New York this year. I looked into it, but it was very hard, and it's the whole.
But imagine having Maya Rudolph's job. Wouldn't that? I mean, I'm with you because we're acty type people. I know you're a performer, William.
Well, also you're into improvisation, William, which surprises me. Because that's part of the joy of that show is when things go wrong and magic things happen, and you know that it's just happening in the moment, and they're kind of.
But sometimes it is just silly. Yeah. And you know me, I'm extremely serious and po-faced and have very little time, as a rule, for like silliness, quote unquote. So I I would agree that, you see, I only ever watch it, I only ever consume SNL in sketches off of the internet, never as a whole show. And I would agree that I don't think I would find a whole, is it 60 minutes or is it 90?
90 minutes.
I don't think I would find the whole 90 minutes brilliant. I would find bits of it brilliant, you see.
You know what's funny? Like, some of the SNL movies, like MacGruber, I think that's one of the funniest movies ever made. Like, I love that movie. Wayne's World, all these chef's kisses.
Yeah.
So I like that stuff.
Yeah.
But just something about the show itself and the improv nature of it, I don't know. It just doesn't.
Do you like other sketch comedy shows? Have you enjoyed other...
I mean, Monty Python is one of my favorite troupes of all time, and I love their stuff.
Those are all sketches. You see, I don't find all of Monty Python funny,
Okay.
but it has a very high hit rate.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I mean, though, right? A lot of these shows, they do have hits or misses.
Yeah.
There is quite a few little references, William, that you wouldn't have appreciated. One of my favourite ones was the llama. So there's famously a llama always backstage whenever they do a backstage walking shot in SNL, and it's never been in any sketch. There's always a llama and a couple of showgirls,
Right.
Vegas showgirls, and so that when there's that moment in the movie where it's like, what's this llama for? I don't know.
Oh, that's cool.
It's just a little bit in reference to that.
Yeah.
And the thing that struck me, like, if we were to take this film as gospel, or as to what this
Which it
process
isn't.
was, but it's close enough. What's impressed me the most, and maybe you can speak more to this having watched that first episode, Sarah, is how many of these beats are still present in the show 50 years or 49 years later. Like, it always has a cold open, it always has the announcer saying all the names, it always has the monologue from the host, it always has the weekend update desk, it always has a couple of musical numbers, and then kind of peppered through as various sketches.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
an interesting point. It
hasn't really
That's
changed.
pretty enduring, isn't it?
Yeah.
50
And-
years, that's amazing.
And Lorne Michaels is still involved. So Lorne Michaels, and I have to do a massive shout out to Gabriel Labelle, who's the young lad from The Fabelmans, which I loved, who plays Spielberg in The Fabelmans. And Gabriel Labelle plays Lorne Michaels, the real-life showrunner. Now, how amazing that Lorne Michaels was a young, plucky showrunner back in 1975, and then has been involved pretty much the whole time. He dropped out for a time and
He got
has come
fired.
back on.
Yeah. There's only one person they reckon who has been there the whole time. Do you know who it is?
What do you mean has been there the whole
Who's
time?
been involved in SNL since the beginning? Because Lorne Michaels, famously was fired.
I'm not sure who.
The man who was laying the bricks.
I do know. I was about to say, was it the bricklayer?
Yeah, I
That
can't
is
remember
so
his
funny.
actual name, but yeah, they reckon it's
Really?
unsubstantiated, but they reckon
Wow.
that he's the only one that's been there since the beginning.
Well, that's so funny. But I mean, the fact that Lorne Michaels, who just turned 80 this month, and he's turned 80 and he's still involved. I think that is really splendid, and that must speak quite a lot, I suppose, to the continuity of format.
I said to William as we were walking out, I wonder what will happen to that show when he decides to retire, or he, passes away, because he, like I said, he's 80. That show requires a significant amount of energy. All of the castmates who have since moved on, your Andy Sambergs, your Kristen Wiggs, they talk about it's just the sustaining of energy it takes to do that show is massive. Kenan Thompson is still there. He's been in the show since, somewhere in the 2000s. I think he's the longest standing cast member. This is Kenan Thompson of Kenan and Kel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a hard slog of a show. You don't really sleep when you're on that week.
No.
You sleep in the office. It's a mammoth task.
Goodness gracious. Heading back to what you were saying with Lorne Michaels and Gabriel Labelle, I thought it was pretty amazing how both he and what's his face? Philip Seymour Hoffman's son.
Yes, Cooper Hoffman.
Cooper Hoffman from
Isn't
Licorice
he
Pizza.
Adorable.
Who is he in the film?
He's Dick Ebersol, the producer.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the two of them, they were the Spielberg and the
Lucas.
Paul Thomas Anderson analogs in their respective movies,
Got you.
and now they're together at last. It was pretty great, and they have great chemistry.
They do. They do
Yeah.
have great chemistry. That kid is incredible. Look, we could do a whole podcast just singing the praises of the Hoffman family in a way.
It's kind of a Nepo baby film, isn't it? With
the
Jason Reitman. And,
Yeah, that's right.
Well, by the way, what do you guys think about Jason Reitman? Because I know
Up in the air. Thank you for smoking.
Juno.
That's right, Juno back in the day. Isn't that extraordinary?
Yeah, and
I
then
enjoyed all those movies.
Young Adult, which I loved.
Yes, that was great.
That's brilliant.
And then he goes, we did Did we do Ghostbusters? I can't remember. No, we did the other Ghostbusters.
The girl one.
Yes, the girl one.
What am I-
Ghostbusters.
Sorry, listeners.
Girl
Did I-
edition.
Sorry,
See,
listeners,
we
that was
saw the
terrible
ice
of me.
one, didn't we?
Yeah, Frozen Empire
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
year.
But I don't think we've talked about Frozen Empire because
Well, do we need to?
no,
talk
there
about-
isn't.
No.
we don't need to talk about Frozen Empire, but we did talk about Ghostbusters, the girl one.
It just seems like because Ghostbusters. Oh, I've talked to you guys about this before, but Ghostbusters Afterlife is one of the worst movies I've seen. It is the most like, oh, remember this? Well, let's bathe it in nostalgic light.
I didn't see that in the end.
And
I skipped
awful.
that one.
It's out of all these Lego sequels, it is by far the most, praising of the original source material. And I
Yeah.
get it. He made the movie with his dad, and it was his dad's final contribution. Like that is meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
But it just seems like the last 5 years of Reitman has been him in Ghostbusters land saying, "Oh, look at how great Ghostbusters is." And so it's actually pretty cool for him to transition into something else. Yes, this movie
Yeah.
is also very much, singing the praises of
pay-in
something
to things. Yeah,
extremely nostalgic.
Yeah.
But I guess at least it's not Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't rest on the laurels of Saturday Night Live. I mean, it does in terms of the content, but I mean, it's not really. It creates its own rhythm, and we've talked about Birdman as being
Yes,
a
that's
kind
right.
of connector, but it's got this rhythm about it, this sort of. And it's very 70s.
All those
and
whip
the,
pans.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
camera work, the acting, the choreography of the scenes, like the blocking of the scenes. It is a very impressive movie, and it's
The
got
fast
this.
zooms and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's very well made.
It
and
is.
It's filmed on 16mm, right?
Which is so good.
Yeah.
We were talking immediately after the movie, right, Jeremy? Like, what is this? Because I hope this is not faux film.
Yeah.
It looks amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an exhausting film, goes without saying. I thought that the exhaustiveness of it, obviously, it helps, it gives the audience that immersive experience of you're here too, and we have 90 minutes until we make 90 minutes of great television, and it's incredibly stressful. My understanding is... And this is obviously just anecdotal because I don't really know, but my understanding is that it is slightly hyperbolized version of what happened. Like, I don't know if the lighting rigs fell down. I don't know if... I do know that Belushi is always problematic and that he wouldn't sign his contract and all that, but, I don't know the extent to which people threatened to walk off.
Did Al Franken squirt blood everywhere?
Exactly. I don't know. But isn't it crazy and thrilling when Michaels stands in front of the board, the plan, your lesson plan, if you will, and then goes, okay, forget it, takes the stuff off and goes again. You know what I mean? And you're like, dude, you're on in 37 minutes.
There
or
is an
whatever.
element, though. I think that there are elements of truth. Like that board, I know that they don't know, the cast don't know what's going to get on live TV until right before it happens.
Oh.
So,
Wow.
and sometimes things get added in at the last minute. So if they have an extra bit of time, they'll quickly throw in that random sketch.
Isn't that
And there's been
amazing?
some sketches that have blown up that were last minute additions that nobody really believed
But they've all
in.
been rehearsed, right? So because it's weekly, am I right in saying they spend a week writing it, casting it, rehearsing it?
They do a they rehearse it, but they also do a dress rehearsal earlier that evening with an audience.
Yes.
And they record that.
Right.
And I guess they must record that in case anything does happen, like in the film.
Yeah.
But I think about like the sketches coming to mind as Lisa from Temecula, which is, I think I mentioned to you, William, after the film. It's is it Ego Nwadum, is that her name? And she is cutting a steak and the whole table is shaking and Pedro Pascal's in it and there's wine going everywhere. And that was a last minute change, last minute add to the plan.
Yeah.
The cast, the crewmates under the table that were making it move around because she was supposedly cutting a steak so vigorously
Yeah.
were doing it far more than the rehearsal.
Yeah.
So lots of things happened that weren't expected, and it's when you watch that, everybody's breaking, and it's just. It was a phenomenon when that came onto air, and it gets cut off short because they run out of time. The episode's ending.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting,
great.
Jeremy, that you mentioned that William is involved in improv because the three of us have all done or coached or been involved in improv, theatre, sports and that, right? And you've reminded me, because this I shouldn't say the seminal sketch, there are so many that are marvellous, but there's that classic UFO sketch with Kate McKinnon and
Cecily
Ryan
Strong.
Gosling.
Cecily Strong, Ryan Gosling. Yep.
And they are Have you seen the UFO?
I don't think I have.
I would say it's
Okay.
good. You should totally watch it, but you may not necessarily find it funny. But my point is simply this: they're being debriefed. That the three of them have been obviously abducted by aliens, plonked back down, and they're having their debrief. And the sketch is incredibly funny and well done. But one of the things that's super funny about it is the fact that they all try not to corpse. So they all try not to laugh and break character. And yet, all of us who have done improv know that there is that beautiful line between corpsing and looking like you're really trying not to corpse. Then that is the sweet spot for the audience. So actually, if you did it successfully and kept a straight face, it would be kind of funny. If you did it and you lost it completely and laughed through the whole thing, it would be rubbish. But we all know how it is to watch Kate McKinnon sitting there with her legs splayed apart, smoking a fag, talking about how they did this and that and the other and all that, and watching Ryan Gosling next to her trying to put on a straight, and you can see the struggle, and that is beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's so funny when you tell me that they've rehearsed or at least done read-throughs and whatnot, but they haven't managed to get all that out their system necessarily.
Well, there's the classic ones of Bill Hader and Fred Armisen with Kristen Wiig, but Fred Armisen would do things all the time to throw Bill Hader off. And there's this sketch that Bill Hader is he presents himself as some sort of psychologist or psychiatrist, and he speaks to the camera and he's like, I have been working with people with short-term memory loss, and I have perfected the art of teaching them acting. And it's just this stupid sketch where the actors are forgetting what they're doing the whole time.
Yeah.
And his technique is useless. But Fred Armisen, he comes into the scene wearing this big puffer jacket and this period piece thing, which was not not rehearsed.
Yeah.
And Bill Hader, goes, take this jacket off. And then Fred Armisen just spends a while trying to figure out where to put the jacket down. And it just sends Bill Hader. And he talks about it. He's like, that was not, we never rehearsed that. And just you see the quickness with how they're working with each other. And
interesting.
Hey, should we move to a network?
We'll have to, because otherwise we could talk about SNL forever.
Yeah. I had never seen this film before last night.
Okay, so hi, my name's Sarah, and
Hi,
sometimes I come up with ideas for our connecting film. And you're absolutely right that Birdman would have been great if A, I'd come up with that, and B, we hadn't already done it. But Network, do you know what? I saw it years ago. And I really did not remember the whole plot at all, but I knew it was based in a network newsroom. So I thought, well, there you go. And I knew it was the 70s. And actually, the only bit that I really remembered was Peter Finch's character shouting, oh my God, it's the 70s.
I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
That's right. And he only says it about 72 times throughout the script, I know. So I thought, hey, let's do that. And I know you guys are great. You're like, well, all right, we'll see what the fuss is about. Holy mackerel. Having now rewatched it, it seems so relevant. So there's so many connections between the two films, but also on its own. Oh my God, guys. Network is how old did we say? Nearly 50 years old. And how horrifically prescient is it for not just the state of America and having a businessman running a country, like a network, but Network didn't even know that the internet was coming. It didn't know that ratings and all that was going to be such a thing. It didn't know that people would watch deplorable things on the internet in order to be titillated. And all of us, and yet Paddy Chayefsky, or the scriptwriter, he imagines a woman like Diana Christensen who is like bullishly like, we need to get the ratings and we need to do this thing and let him say it and let's have this mousy tongue hour and let's watch crimes that are happening in the moment and far out. And you go, oh my gosh, who knew that was going to be the way that things would go?
I watched this with a friend of mine who I'm staying with at the moment, and she and I were just like, this is so relevant.
Yes.
This is so relevant. And it's, like you say, Sarah, almost 50 years old. I watched this film, and the whole time I was thinking, man, so much of this is familiar. Is it just because it's so much a part of the zeitgeist and it's been parodied and it's influenced films? But when I went onto my IMDb, I already ranked it. So I must have watched it in the past, but I swear I would have had more of a memory because it was such a memorable film. I'm thinking, did I watch it for a uni assignment and just skip through and pretend I'd seen it, or
did you just want to look cool on IMDb?
yeah, maybe.
Did you
I've
just
seen Network.
Yeah, that's right.
1976.
I'm really into the alien movies. Yeah.
But I loved this film. I was laughing so much in this movie, and
Isn't it clever?
It's so funny, and so and the acting. Oh, the acting blew me away. Like there was just all the actors that won awards. I'm like, yep, that makes sense.
It's an actor's movie, and it knows it.
And it's because the script is so amazing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. So hi everyone, I'm William. I love this movie. My God.
Are you so stoked?
I am. So I watched it with my mum, and for most of the runtime, I think I was. I felt myself be slack-jawed. Like I cannot believe what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
It is a movie out of time.
Yes, it is.
This feels, as you guys have been saying, as relevant now in the tail end of 2024 as it was in 1976, right? And knowing what has happened since 1976, it's even more horrifying.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like nowadays, if they made it with influences and all that stuff, my goodness, to kind of democratize this monster's nest of a producer's gallery, and give this power to every single person around the world who has a phone. I mean, what are we doing?
I know.
It's
I know.
horrifying.
And we're suffering the effects of it. You know, it's interesting. I thought of that film Don't Look Up, which a lot of people rallied against. I quite enjoyed it.
The Netflix film with Everybody Who's Anybody.
Yeah,
that wasn't very good.
I did enjoy it, but my gosh, it's so preachy, right? It's such a preachy film. It's really got an agenda. This film, whilst it's literally preachy, it doesn't have that same agenda. It is just holding up a mirror to where we could go and where we've been and where we are.
And where we did go,
Jimmy, you say Don't Look Up. I think back to a couple of weeks ago to the magnum opus known as Megalopolis. And kind of everything I felt frustrated about with Megalopolis. It's like, gosh, this movie has everything to say and nothing to say, right? It's just Sturm and Strang and gosh, Francis Ford Coppola, like take a seat, please, take a seat. Whereas this movie, it felt like every single thing out of every single character's mouth had both something to do with the plot, had something to do with the comedy, and at the same time, really, really trenchant satire about the times. I mean, gosh, it's no wonder the script has been nominated for so many like top 10 scripts of all time and all these lists. Like, it is extraordinary, and at the same time, it gives the actors just the ability to go full Shakespeare.
Yeah, I was literally about to say it is almost Shakespearean. And I think that's the big thing. You're so right. Okay, Megalopolis has something to say, but he doesn't say it in a very clever or articulate, well, it's not articulate at all, but he doesn't say it in a beautiful way. Whereas this, every line is a zinger. And it's not a zinger in the, I have to say, like I thought the script for Saturday Night was marvellous. And there are a lot of zingers. That's not a budget, it's a ransom note. And, you know, like that. That's right. But so they're not zingers in Network, but everything. When William Holden is breaking up with Faye Dunaway and he eviscerates her quite rightly and says, you're not a person, you're not a human, you're a this, you're a lala. I can't even remember. Like, if only I had the script in front of me. Every line is damning and incisive and relevant and true, and do you know what I mean? It's not
totally, because I think
not just for whoever's.
The one that got out, me, my friend watching with me, Phoebe, we who's been on this podcast,
friend of the show,
friend of the podcast. When Beatrice Straight does her speech as the wife, the kind of shafted wife of William Holden's character, and she won an Academy Award for that. Shortest performance in
is it?
In history
is
to
it,
win
is
an
it?
Academy Award.
Oh,
right?
is it shorter than Judi Dench?
It can't be shorter than Judi Dench. It's Elizabeth I.
6 minutes or 5 minutes.
Wow, because she was only in for 11 minutes. So okay.
Possibly Judi Dench overtook
when she
her,
says, "I've given you my whole life, do you love her?" and he says, "I don't know, but I'm obsessed with her," and that one.
Yeah. So that moment, right, that's just the speech that got us, and we're like, whew, and her acting is impeccable. For every one of those moments that just land, you've got the sex scene between Diana.
Oh my God, when she doesn't stop talking.
She talks about TV the whole time, and then climaxes at the end of it. I was like, this
and then
is
she goes,
hilarious.
and then she lies on him and goes, and I'm also thinking about doing blood. It's like she doesn't miss a beat.
So great.
And it's set up before as well. When
Yeah.
it's like, often people say, I'm more of a man as a lover than a woman.
So good. And then the other part was the domestic terrorists arguing over TV revenue.
With the
The
lawyers.
TV rights. Amazing.
Which at the same time shouldn't work, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so goofy.
Yeah.
And so,
I don't want to handle the distribution. I'm not here to do it. It's unbelievable.
But something about the tone of the movie, it's like, this fits in exactly with the world that is illustrated in front of you.
And she's amazing, that actor. Like another great actor in the piece who plays the kind of head of the Communist Party. She's brilliant. And Faye Dunaway's character is just what a despicable character, but she is a powerhouse.
She's amazing.
Perfect.
I never
cast.
knew, and I haven't seen a heck of a lot. I've seen Chinatown and Bonnie and Clyde, blah blah. But I never thought of Faye Dunaway until rewatching this and going, holy mackerel! That's why she's, as well as being incredibly beautiful, that's why she is as esteemed as she is.
Yeah.
Her
Terrific.
timing is just so on point.
I mean, it takes a lot for Robert Duvall to be overshadowed in the film, and he's
Nice.
brilliant, but he's
He's amazing.
overshadowed by.
Yeah.
I mean, can we talk about Peter Finch? I was watching that film. And I just was astounded by his performance in all of those rants. It is incredible. And and you know that he died during the press run for this film. He died in front of Sidney Lumet.
What?
Whoa.
Lumet.
Well, Lumet. Sorry.
Lumet. We talked about this beforehand.
I knew it was the Lou. Sorry, he had some sort of heart attack.
did
walked,
he?
and then he died later in the hospital.
During the press thing for this
in the
film.
hotel lobby, yeah.
But did he win his Oscar
He's the
posthumously?
first posthumous Oscar winner.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that at all.
Yeah, and then the next one is Heath Ledger for The Dark Knight.
Yeah. Oh,
So
gosh.
he is phenomenal in this film.
Yeah.
And I think, this movie starts off with that moment, and I was thinking, is he gonna become successful because of his rants? And that's exactly where it goes. And I was expecting I knew that the domestic terrorists were gonna come into it at some point. But I really liked the what's the word? When you keep things nice and tight and
Like dovetail?
no, like the brevity.
Oh,
the brevity
yeah.
of the ending. They made the choice. He was going to die, and then he dies, and that's the end. And I was like,
The discussion of killing a man in front of a live audience is just chilling. And also just so darkly comic.
It reminded me of Joker, right? I was thinking of the Joker film.
Yeah.
Same thing, but not as funny.
No, but in real life, you may know and may recall, that film Christine, starring Rebecca Hall, about the real woman who did shoot herself live on network television.
No.
And it was after, thankfully, after Network the movie. Otherwise, this would have been in incredibly poor taste. While William's saying what he
mean it
wanted
was
to say.
before?
I think
no,
it was...
no.
after.
Subsequent. Because otherwise, you couldn't make a film.
I'm pretty sure it was before Network, if I remember correctly. Anyway, sorry, continue, Sarah.
Well, I'm saying Christine, and of course it's not called Christine because that would be the movie with the car. There it is. Yes, it is. It's called Christine. It stars Rebecca Hall, the British actress, who I really like.
She's a great actor.
To gain her boss's approval, Christine Chubbuck, a television reporter, turns her attention towards crime news. However, her depression and unhappiness soon spiral out of control.
Wow.
So she was the news reporter who was the first person to die by suicide on a live television broadcast. And so, knowing that's incredibly unnerving and distasteful and all that sort of thing. And it was not... No, oh, okay, wait, this says 1974.
I'm pretty sure it was before Network.
Well, that's awkward.
And so that was one of the jumping off points for the actual writing of the script.
Well,
Yeah.
but that seems... you wouldn't do that nowadays. That would be distasteful nowadays, wouldn't it?
I guess so, yeah. But I mean, if you're looking at America, that's just coming off the end of horrific war with Vietnam and...
Yes, but if she did that in 1974 and this film is set in 75 and comes out in 76, that feels to me like the epitome of too soon.
Maybe it happened more than once. maybe there was more than just this one moment. you know?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe there's other things that had occurred that they felt that this was. I mean, from what I understand, the writer and director, what's the writer's name again?
Paddy Chayefsky.
Paddy Chayefsky and Sidney Lumet.
Yes.
They didn't feel they were writing a satire. They just were writing what was happening.
And yet, it's absolutely a lauded satire.
And there's a story as well that George Clooney showed the film to a bunch of young people in 2005, and they didn't really get the satire, which, like, arguably, satire's often challenging for young people to understand as a teacher who's tried to teach satire. But it was more like, no, this is all true.
This is how it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite funny what you were saying, Jeremy, about having seen a lot of things that have since come out that feel very, very reminiscent of Network.
Yeah.
Now thinking about things like Black Mirror. Now thinking of things like BoJack Horseman.
Yeah.
All these shows, these properties that draw upon kind of the darker side of entertainment and the entertainment industry. I think they owe, in retrospect, my understanding is they owe so much to this movie, right? This is the genesis point of all these stories about using television and productions as kind of the mirror to the American populace. And this just does it so well.
Yeah.
So well. The scene where, everyone is leaning out the window and
Yes,
screaming.
yes.
Yeah.
And suddenly he just becomes this populist god overnight. Completely believable.
Yeah.
And dark and funny and, oh my gosh. I mean, everything that's happened up to this point, we've just gone through the whole election cycle with the States. This is it. This is the world we're living in.
I was really quite excited watching Network because aesthetically it was so similar to Saturday Night.
Yeah.
And it made me realize how much Saturday Night got right.
Yes.
And just the fashions, not even the fashions and the hairstyles, but also just the buildings and the rooms and the way that those spaces worked and the kind of boardrooms, and it's like all of these things are just, even that's the parts that are not relevant anymore. How these things happen.
Yeah.
And it was quite refreshing from that sense. But it made me realize, wow, okay, if these movies have got anything to say, it's that technology hasn't really got too much to say for this. Like, sure, social media has completely changed the game and changed the way we do this, but it's the kind of core ideas are really about capitalism versus humanity.
Yes.
And that's why it
And
still
they're
works.
timeless.
Well,
That's
it
the
is,
awful
right?
thing.
Technology's not, and styles are not, but
the impetus behind it all absolutely is.
yeah, and that's probably where the Shakespearean element comes from, right? Is that these are these ideas that Shakespeare could have written a version of this way back when.
Actually, that's true.
And it still would have worked. It would have
And
been
actually,
about
that's true,
power
right?
class
And actually, Gladiator. It's you're right.
Did Shakespeare write Gladiator?
No, but I'm saying, it's all.
He wrote Gladiator too, didn't
It's
he?
always been
Was it his son?
about wealth and control and entertainment and the masses and blah blah blah. It's you're right. It's always the same.
Because you have Ned Beatty's amazing monologue, right?
Yes.
About
Which one?
corporations.
The one with the beautiful green, the green lights. You know how isn't it shot extraordinarily?
Yeah.
So
He
he's
walks into
down
the
there
light.
in the dark, and they're in what are they in, like a research room or a library?
a boardroom.
Right, but
Yeah.
they've got those green lamps.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Sorry. When you said Ned Beatty, I was thinking Peter Finch. But yes,
No, Peter Finch
yes,
is there
yes.
listening to him
Oh, yeah.
berating
Incredible.
him.
And the way it mimics his moment where he's in bed and he's
Yeah.
like talking to someone.
Yeah.
And it's even the same dialogue, isn't it?
Yeah. I've just seen the face of God.
Yeah.
Says maybe that's true. Or
He got nominated for an Academy Award for that role as well.
Yeah.
yeah.
For that, 4-minute sequence?
Just everything he's
Yeah,
talking
but Ted
about.
Beatty's in more of Beatty is in at least more of the film.
Is he?
Yeah.
He shows up at the end for that moment. And then
No. He's right there from the beginning as one of the proprietors. I saw him.
Oh, okay. I don't think he's in that much of the movie, right?
But
because he
he's-
gets his big scene at the end, and that's pretty much it.
No, I feel like he's in one
He
of
said,
the
I was
parties.
reading some of the trivia and
Okay.
he said that it was a lesson to never turn down work because he had this one day on this film or whatever it was and it got him an Academy Award nomination.
Yeah, wow.
But just as a culmination of the themes of the movie and being in that horrible space and hearing this horrible stuff out of a horrible man and knowing that in your heart of hearts, he's got a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it works, eh? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of the 70s,
Speaking of the 70s.
Speaking of the 70s, that wonderful bygone era.
Yeah.
I did bring up to you guys that I thought the Muppet movie would have been a great comparison.
But I
with
thought you were
Saturday Night as
joking.
well.
And then
No,
Jeremy said to
completely
me,
serious.
so I think William was serious about the Muppet, and I was like, was he? I thought, because I can't tell on Messenger, I can't tell if you've got a twinkle in your eye, William. He was like, no, I think he meant it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Have you guys seen the Muppet movie?
Yes, and I said,
when I
I'm
was a
not
kid.
watching that
Okay.
again.
It's wonderful, right?
Oh, wait, you mean the original old one?
The original 1979 one.
I thought
Yeah.
it was the one from a few years
Oh,
ago.
no.
I was the 1970s one.
No,
I
not the
don't
one
know.
with Jason Segel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good. It got Brett McKenzie his Oscar, so...
Yeah, no. Okay, well, anyway. So, no, but why?
Anyway, yeah, because that movie, I mean, the original Muppets was about a variety show. And all sorts of crazy people coming together and making this madcap energy work. And the whole film is about the put upon, kind of Jewish-coded everyman, Kermit the Frog, going around trying to be the glue that holds together this
Yes.
band of misfits.
Yeah.
And at the end, by
hook or
Jove,
by crook.
there we
Yeah.
go. They managed to do it, and they pull it off. And I watched Saturday Night and was like, this reminds me of something. And then I just by happenstance saw the Muppet movie on Disney Plus. I'm like, yes, this is it.
Nice.
So yeah, definitely very, very 70s. Again, it just goes to show how well they nailed the 70s aesthetic and kind of that energy. We were talking about it, Jeremy, that scene where the cast is just giggling and like running
togas.
through the backlot. And there is that joy of everyone come together. No one knows what's really going to happen, but hey, we're in this together.
We're in this
Yeah.
together, and we need to make it work, and that's exhilarating, isn't it? It's like going into battle or something, but hopefully, you won't die unless somebody drops a lighting rig on your head.
And I think it still feels like that today from people that have been on it, people that have guested on it. They talk about that quality of, wow, it's just the adrenaline that you get from doing that is massive.
Yeah, I think it would be super fun.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side with Network, they use the audience in a completely different way, right? Every time Howard Beale was doing one of his rants, his monologues, I loved the camera cutaways to the film crew in front of his face. It's like, yeah, he may believe what he's saying, but it's just been commodified to heck.
Yeah.
Right? It's so I keep using this word today. It's so dark.
Yeah, it's really cynical. It's
so much so.
So cynical.
And the audience are there, they're eating it up until they don't, because it gets a little bit too personal and too dire.
Yeah.
But every time they show the camera, it's a laugh out loud moment.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is the reality that we live in.
I couldn't help but think of this film in connection to Star Wars. Star Wars is the turning point of cynicism in Hollywood, and this is the closest film that I can think of that I've seen that predates Star Wars that of any kind of note. So there was that cynicism was clear to me, but I'm also like, maybe this is one of the punctuation points of that era.
Yeah. It's interesting that can I just say though, Jeremy, it's interesting you very briefly mentioned Joker. And I hadn't really thought about it, but very, very similar in terms to Network, in terms of somebody who has a point to make, tries to make the point. People go, some people go, oh, you can't make a point like that. The audience, though, goes, yes, you're speaking our language. Let's hear more of that. And then there's that exploitation of somebody who's clearly not well. And when I say not well, I don't mean that Howard Beale is talking nonsense. He's actually absolutely bang on, but he's not well, and it is desperately cynical and unfair, obviously, to exploit that in order to get ratings. Very similar in a way to Joker, isn't it? And then you've got Joker, of course, who has, from the first film at least, this enormous public support. Hey, this whole community, if you will, who are like, you're our voice, you're our messenger.
And all that gets ignored in the second film.
Dun, 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 dun.
All right, let's do final thoughts. Who'd like to kick us off?
Okay, I'll start. So I definitely enjoyed Saturday Night. Again, not understanding most of the references and not knowing most of the lore. Like, it was a good time. I had a good time watching it, and the cast is outstanding.
And at least, of course, as actors, Dan
Yes.
Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, John
Yeah.
Belushi. So it's not like you're like, I don't know who these people are.
I know kind of their tics and characters.
Exactly.
And so the people who mimic them are doing a marvellous job.
Yeah.
Marvellous. That being said, I think it's not really fair to compare it to Network. Because watching Network was like watching...
Having an epiphany.
Seeing the face of God.
Hey! Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah.
So this is what a mass-marketed film that's, ostensibly a comedy, bit of a drama, quite expensive, starring a lot of people. This is what the kind of movie can be.
Yeah, it used to be.
We've been there before, and now
Yeah.
this kind of movie is impossible. I thought Network was just tremendous. Loved it to bits. And I just wish we could still make movies like this, which don't go straight to streaming, right? Like, it's really sad, but really, really astonishing work.
Nice. I agree with everything you just said, William. I really enjoyed Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night.
I know. I keep calling it
I
that.
enjoyed it far more than I thought I was going to. And would I rewatch it again? Probably not, but really enjoyed all the performances and what they were doing. And yeah, Network blew me away. And I guess that's the thing that I come back to. I'm like, if I've seen this movie, I clearly didn't really watch it properly because it would have had more of an effect on me. Because that was a very memorable experience watching it this time. And like you say, William, as well, it's like a grandfather film to so many other texts, and it's so nice to go back. And I always get excited when I go and watch a classic, and I love it and
Yes.
understand why it's such a classic.
Yeah.
Which is most classics, but you never really know until you're getting in there. I had a great time.
I enjoyed both. And everything that you've just said. Look, I have had the chance just to very quickly check, because I had assumed that Christine's suicide was after, because otherwise it seemed too unseemly to me. And technically it sort of was, but I'll explain what Wikipedia tells me, is that actually Chayefsky wanted to write this script, and so... Apparently it says here that he spoke to his friend at NBC and said, is it likely, is it possible that somebody on air will go a bit crazy? And the guy was like, yeah, totally. And within a week, Chayefsky had written a rough draft of the script of Network. And then that same year, a local news anchor, Christine Chubbuck, committed suicide. Okay. So it wasn't, obviously in the 70s, they didn't care as much to go, whoa, we better back burner that whole project, too soon, But it wasn't a direct result of her doing it. And I just wanted to make that clear, because it would have felt a little distasteful, perhaps, to be quite so on the nose, because it's a very on the nose film. Howard Beale isn't just going, and I don't want to take it anymore. He's literally saying, I'm going to do this thing. And then, of course, it is grotesque by the end of it all. So that was my clarification point. Yeah, look, I don't really have anything more to say, except that I really concur with you, William, about that's how they used to make movies. Gosh, I feel like an old person saying this. And sometimes they still make wonderful... Of course there are wonderful films being made. But back then, nobody... I feel as though nowadays, if you were George Clooney and you were making another satire... there would be a portion of the world going, oh, you're so preachy, or we know this already, or whatever. Whereas Network feels fresh and epiphanical and kind of like, yeah. And the saddest thing, although I think this is probably my biggest learning from the whole business, is the saddest thing is nobody's taken a blind bit of notice. And as we said earlier, we've gone ahead and we have continued to create a world in which this sort of thing happens, and where people are exploited for ratings, and it's all about the commerce of it all, etc., etc., etc. It still happens to this day. The world is run like a business. It's kind of an absurd monologue that when Ned Beatty's going, there are no countries and all that, and you're like, well, no, technically there are countries, but then you kind of listen to what he's saying and get his point. And then
that was talking about globalization back in 1975. It's like, holy cow, they have seen decades ahead.
Exactly. Stuff like that. So, yeah, kind of depressing. And that's why we need Saturday Night Live and its satire so that we can sit down late at night and get drunk and have a laugh and go to bed and feel like nothing really matters.
Well, on that note, that positive note,
Yeah.
thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoy our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and where all great podcasts can be listened to. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode, as well as give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, which will be our end-of-year wrap-up, highlights.
Where we never know what the other people are going to bring to the table.
This is true. And until then,
No mai.